What's up? What's happening? It's Tuesday night, I think, Wednesday for you podcast listeners. There's somehow 50 of you savages hanging out again in here. I don't know if you're burnt out on draft content. I know Cleveland, maybe we don't. Maybe even when we pick 26, we all still want to talk about the draft. Well, it's what I'm going to be talking about. We're going to continue to talk about it, even though you heard me the other day, well, you read me, talk about how burnt out I am by this time of year, because there are just so many people that are just arguing for the sake of arguing at this point about their opinion, and they're throwing it out into the echo chamber. And there's some people that are like, well, this is Andrew Berry's going to do based on his history, and it's like, man, we know what Andrew Berry likes to do. We at the OBR have been talking about what Andrew Berry likes to do for like 6 months when we talk about draft coverage. That's all we talk about. It's not a new concept. So we're going to keep talking to people that we think have a good feel for what the prospects in this draft look like, and at least have a moderate understanding of where the Browns might go. So if you did not listen yesterday, we had the Checkdowns Jordan Zerm join us. He had great insights. He talked about a linebacker. Don't hold it against him. But we went through the rationale of why a linebacker could happen. Talk about the disconnect between national media and what they think the Browns need. They just kind of look at the roster and consider that the Browns need a linebacker. Well, earth-shattering news here. They probably won't take one unless that Mr. Notre Dame JOK himself is there. That's the only guy I'm considering, and I'd imagine that's the only guy they would consider. So I tasked our guest tonight, AJ Schulte. He's from Pro Football Network. A lot of banter with him back and forth. People, like I said, I talk to people that I think are grounded about this thing, have fair opinions, do the work. I think AJ is a guy who does the work. I think he has good insight. So if you're not following him, make sure you are following him. I will get him to share that information with you. AJ, how are you, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well, man. You hyped me up, man. Grounded, fair opinions, me. Wow.
I'm the hype guy, man. That's what I do. I make people feel good. That's what I try to do, at least. But no, it's not smoke. I bring people on I respect. So I think you've got some good insight. So I tasked AJ, just like I have, if you guys are loyal listeners, I've tasked almost everybody that's come on with A, giving me their Browns fits, and then B, kind of giving me some people that they would pound the table for, two people that they necessarily believe in. So I gave AJ the same homework. And yeah, let's talk with him about, we'll go back to the beginning of this fun slideshow and let him talk about guys he thinks fits early, that fit in the early, the middle, and the late portions of the draft. So I'll let you lead off, AJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, so to start, I don't have a single linebacker, so that's a check mark right there, right? I've read all the people who are talking about no linebacker, so I'm buying with that. I think that's kind of the direction, like you said. If Owusu-Koramoah is there, he'd be the pick, but I don't think he makes it past Washington personally. So I went with a couple of guys here early on that I feel like the Browns kind of have to take early at 26. I don't think they can trade down any lower and get either of these guys. And the first one is Joseph Osai, the edge rusher out of Texas. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, they got Clowney, right? They don't need edge rusher," but Clowney's going to rush a lot from the interior, right? That's kind of been his bread and butter. He's a really good interior power rusher, and you kind of have on the other edge rusher, you have Tack McKinley, who I mean we don't know how good Tack McKinley can be. We've not really seen him play well at the NFL level. So, if you're going with a 3 pass rusher set, you kind of have that unknown number 3 if Tack McKinley's out there on the field with Clowney and Myles Garrett. And so for me, I was like, you know what? The Browns love pass rush. That San Francisco style of defense has been super heavy on pass rushers. So Joseph Osai, right there at 26, to me, he's a tier 1 pass rusher in this class. I've seen a lot of people have him like edge 5, 6, 7, and I don't think this edge rush class is that good enough to have him that low, personally. I think he does so many things well. He's a high energy, high impact kind of guy. You see that kind of presence on the field. He never takes a play off, right? He's powerful. He's crazy athletic, explosive on the field. I mean, he had like a 41-inch vertical and a 10-11 broad, which was like 9.95, 998 on the RAS testing. Like, this is a guy who is just scratching the surface of what he can be. And he just turned 21, like last week. Mm-hmm. He's a young kid, and he's still scratching the surface of his potential. And he's a freak, excellent run defender, power guy. Like, to me, at 26, if you're really wanting to boost that pass rush when you've got to play, if you're making the playoffs, you're going to have to line up against guys like Patrick Mahomes, and you got to get put pressure. I think that was one thing that Cleveland struggled to do down the stretch last year, especially after Myles Garrett post-COVID. They really had a tough time getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and I think that fed into the secondary, and it's why people thought the secondary was so incredibly bad. It kind of created this perception about the whole thing. So I think right away, I think Cleveland understands that. They value pass rushers heavily. Osai just checks off so many boxes, and he's just so young. That's what's scary to me. I mean, he literally turned 21 last week. he's younger than I am, which is weird.
He is. He's one of the younger prospects in the entire draft from an upper portion of the draft concept. So, well, what I'm going to ask you is, I think a lot of people think, at least a general talking point is, take a corner in the first round, maybe Greg Newsome, maybe Caleb Farley falls, and then you could maybe trade up in the second round and go get Osai at like 35 to 40 range. You think he's gone by that point?
Yeah. Personally, I don't see how Baltimore doesn't take him at 27 because
he's a very Baltimore type. Yeah.
He just screams Baltimore Raven. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore tries to trade up to get him. Just even like a flip with the Jaguars to spite Cleveland and get him. Like, he just fits that culture so well. And the thing with corners is, with the Browns, you have like 4 teams right there who are all going to likely take a corner, right? You've got the Titans need a corner. Malcolm Butler's gone. Adoree Jackson's gone. The Jets need a corner bad, right? I mean, right there you could have Caleb Farley and Greg Newsome go. So
I think you could start like flirting those guys at like 18, 19, some names you really want on the board. And then I've done plenty of these mocks, especially on your network, where it's like, okay, about pick 20, I'm like, there's like 5 guys I like, and it seems like 4 of the 5 are always gone. Just boom, boom, boom guys that you're really interested in. So you're right. I think that flip could definitely happen. Well, you talked about Baltimore and the fit for Osai. I think there's another guy who, from an offensive perspective, and Bateman, that I think is another ideal fit for Baltimore. But it could be, we've talked about this. I committed a specific podcast to Rashad Bateman about what I like about him. Tell me what you like about him for our listeners.
To me, I know that it might be a little bit of a hot take considering who's at the top of the class, but Bateman to me is right up there with them. I think he's the best route runner in the class. I really do. I think from a standpoint of where his route tree, his ability to just sink his hips and drop and go. He's a great athlete. I mean, to me, I know people are going to think this as a negative because of how his pro career turned out, but he reminds me a lot of Kevin White coming out of West Virginia. Kevin White went like 7th overall. If White didn't have those freak injuries, I think White would have had a phenomenal NFL career. But you look at route running, the catch radius, Bateman just catches everything. Right. Part of the reason why the Minnesota offense was so good, despite having some really poor quarterback play, was Bateman just consistently moved the chains and was just such a security blanket. And, with Baltimore, we don't, there's always those rumors about Odell. They happen every offseason. I don't think that's going to happen. You have Jarvis Landry, who's slated to make a lot of money. We don't really know the situation there. But Bateman right away, I think, steps in. I love Rashad Higgins, don't get me wrong, but I think Bateman is a better player right now. I do.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think you get to Bateman when you think of like the conversation we just had, which is, okay, we're at pick 19, and the Washington football team takes somebody you're interested in, and then maybe 3 of the next 4 are all guys that you really were ideally interested in, but they all come off the board, and then you're sitting at pick 26, maybe Osai, Ojulari, your corners are off the board. JOK goes to Miami or something of that ilk. And it's like, okay, now we're sitting here. We maybe don't have the best trade down options. If we sit here and take a player, who's our highest graded player, that's where I think Bateman could come into the play for Cleveland. Now, if there are, if for example, Newsome's there or maybe they have a really high grade on Asante Samuel is sitting there, or Farley slips. Like, I don't expect them to pass on some more important defensive. Right. I don't think they're needs, but there may be defensive wants. Then I could certainly see them passing on Bateman. But if those guys are gone, there is a realm in which it happens. So I'm glad that you're really high on him.
It's the kind of like the BPA argument essentially with him is if he's there. I mean, unless you have like Surtain or Horn magically there, which is not going to happen. But I don't know of any other players that are going to be there. Yeah, I mean, I think Bateman. I personally, I would take Bateman before I took Newsome or Farley just because of the injury concerns. Bateman never missed a game in college, so if Farley has those back injuries, Newsome's missed like 14 or 15 games in his career. So you have pretty significant injury risk with both of them. And the Browns are going all. They want to go in on all Baker Mayfield and. I think you get as many weapons as you possibly can, and Bateman plays a factor into that.
Absolutely. I don't think you can go wrong adding talent. Even if you're like, well, our offense is set. Well, if he's a good player, then you pick him because he's going to be here for a while. Let's talk. Your next 4 guys are people. The first guy here, Tommy Togiai, Ohio State fans, people that listen to this pod are very familiar with, but he hasn't been talked about much on this podcast. I'm curious what where he ranks for you. Is he like ahead or behind the likes of Levi at Washington, Ali McNeil? Like, where is he for you on your defensive tackle rankings? And then the guys you have after this, we have not talked about at all in this pod. So I'm excited to talk about.
I like Togiai a fair amount. I take him at 59. If he was, I'd take him if he was a second rounder, late second. I think the Browns just cut Sheldon Richardson, but a few months ago I actually wrote Togiai. Pro comp was Sheldon Richardson. I think you look athletic profile coming out of college are pretty similar. I think Togiai is a powerful run defender who's still just kind of scratching the surface as a pass rusher, but they've got a lot of tools, a lot of traits there. I think Cleveland is going to put Elliott and Malik Jackson as kind of the 3 tech. So you have that spot opposite that's kind of a little open right now. And I mean, they only have 3 defensive tackles on roster, I believe. So that spot is pretty thin. I think Togiai would come in and be the best run defender right there.
Yeah, I think they're definitely interested in that position for sure. They have Malik Jackson, Andrew Billings, Jordan Elliott. Yeah. They have some names, but they definitely are going to need to add a 4th name to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and 2 of those guys, I believe, Jackson and Billings are still just on a 1-year deal. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is.
Nope, you're right.
So I mean, if Elliott shows those flashes, takes a step forward as a pass rusher, and then you add Togiai to that, there's your run defender and there's your pass rusher on the interior. That's your 2 starting young guys. Togiai is very young. I believe he's 21 as well right now. He'll turn 22 in, I think, November.
Mhm.
So you have some young talent up there in the middle. I mean, even the second, the third round, these were a couple of the mid-round guys that I wanted to look at. I think that's when you start to kind of shore up. That's where I believe the talent of this defensive line class is. A lot of people think it's bad. I think it's just mainly bad at the top because there's no Quinnen Williams, there's no Ed Oliver, there's no superstar mega freak in this defensive tackle class, and that's okay. We don't have to have one every year. I think you look at the day 2 and day 3 talents, even that's where you're going to find your value. And I think Togiai steps in right away. He contributes. I pro-comped him directly to Sheldon Richardson. How you replace Sheldon Richardson with the younger Sheldon Richardson? It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean,
It does.
I'm just a dude on the internet. What do I know?
That's all any of us are, man. That's all any of us are. Well, we wrote about the OBR today. We're doing big boards. If you have not been paying attention, you're listening to this and you have not hopped on the website, we are doing Browns focused OBR big boards. So kind of looking at what the Browns perspective is on players, what they look for, traits, age, film, testing numbers, and then kind of incorporating it into where we kind of are fitting players that they might be interested. So obviously we're looking at, I don't know. We're looking at quarterbacks. We're going to look at maybe late 7th undrafted guys, just like general where they would look for guys. We started to list some, we listed interior offensive linemen, and I think it's a sneaky need. Like, it's not a need, but it's a sneaky maybe draft desire. J.C. Tretter's not getting any younger. He's hit 30. Joel Bitonio's not getting any younger, and they have a massive decision to make at right guard with Wyatt Teller, whether they want to pay him as he is. If he can reproduce his season last season, which we know was one of the best guards in football, it becomes a challenge. Maybe they don't want to pay premium money to a guard, so they might start looking. They have Nick Harris, who they drafted last year, who they like, but is far too undersized to play guard in the NFL. It was proven when he was forced to play guard against the Jets. So now you look at kind of what names in the mid rounds make sense. Maybe pick 89, pick 91. Talk about this one.
Yeah, I this is one of my pet cats, Robert Hainesy out of Notre Dame. I've been a fan of since really last year, the summer. I wrote about him in the summer. I thought he and Eichenberg could both be like top 50 picks. Watching the 2019 tape, Hainesy is a really smart, really smart offensive lineman. I mean, you just look his ability to pick up stunts and blitzes and call out. I mean, he's a Notre Dame offensive tackle, right? I mean, he's started several years at right tackle, but he measured in underneath the 33-inch arm length, which we all know in NFL is like, oh, that's a guard. And if you're going to the inside, I don't care how good you are. So you look, he could play center, you could play guard. He could even play right tackle in a pinch if necessary. He's smart, super fluid, just a mean, punishing guy. I mean, Robert Hainesy loves putting defenders in the dirt. I think you add him on the interior. Like you said, it's not a super big need, but they had some injuries last year. Like you said, nobody's getting any younger. I think this is a spot where you get ahead of a need next year, and I think Hainesy fills in so many gaps. If you wanted him to play center, if Nick Harris, you feel like, hey, I just don't think he's an NFL guy. Well, there's your center replacement in Hainesy. You have a guard, Bitonio, you got Wyatt Teller. Like you said, you don't know. And if somebody gets hurt, and he can play a variety of roles and really give you your best starting 5 depending on the matchup.
Yeah, Hainesy, what you like is kind of, if you think about it, what you're talking about, AJ, is a guy who has most of his experience at right tackle, but is maybe fit to play guard in the league. It's kind of the Chris Hubbard prototype, which is Chris Hubbard experience at right tackle. Maybe he could play guard. He did play guard for Cleveland last year. He'll be back. The guy they're replacing is Kendall Lamb, who was their kind of other backup tackle who could do a little bit of everything too. So they like those guys who maybe they are guys maybe more fit to play inside, but also have experience on the outside. You want guys who you feel can play a vast majority of the positions on the offensive line, if at all possible, especially with your backup work them in types. And, you get them with Bill Callahan and you got a real good chance to see him develop. Right. So you like that match.
And Hainesy too. I mean, he's not couldn't blow anybody away athletically, right? He's not the super freak. He's not built like Quentin Nelson either, but he's smooth. He's a great lateral mover, and I think he fits the scheme that Bill Callahan wants to run. I think that he brings that right mentality that Bill Callahan loves in his offensive lineman, that rugged, this guy is in front of me, I'm putting him in the dirt, and I'm moving on to the next guy. I think that's Hainesy to a T.
Good insight right there. Let's talk about your next guy. I think it's Darren Hall, right? Let's talk. Well, listen, I'll say this caveat. It's a good thing. I don't know. Some people see Darren Hall as a safety. Some people see him as a corner. Curious your thoughts on that. I think they're going to listen. The safety situation, while it's fun on paper, you have 1 year left on the contract of Ronnie Harrison, and then you have Grant Delpit, who everybody has to understand is going to be slowly eased back into the NFL. Well, into the NFL period. He hasn't played. He's dealing with a very serious physical and mental injury. I don't think they're going to hit the ground running with this group. I do think they're going to be far more interested in safety, which is Trevon Merrick is there in the first round, and somebody I've continued to mention is a guy they could be extremely interested in. But I do think they're going to double dip on corners, and I think you're talking like pick 110 here to pick 169 as a guy that can make sense. Talk about him.
Yeah, Darren Hall, I think has kind of flown a little under the radar because he played – San Diego State has churned out so many defensive backs in the last few years. Devontae KZ, for example, as just a name off the top of my head. But Hall is a really great press man corner. I like him as a corner. I mean, if you want him to play safety, that's great. I think he can. I think he's better off as a corner, just me personally. But I mean, he's a great athlete. He's running a 4.41, I believe. Kind of smooth, physical. I mean, just a dog, a junkyard kind of dog corner, super playmaker. I think he had over 30 pass breakups in college, 6 interceptions. He's a guy that's always around the ball, no wasted movements, in my opinion. I've seen a few people say he's like a little too. I don't know what the right word is, but he doesn't have the J.C. Horn problem of where he's too grabby. I think he's just the right amount of physical and imposing as you can be in a 5'11" frame. He's not super big. But like I like him a lot as if you want him to play corner. I think he could fill a depth room really nicely. Oh, I think I called him 5'11". I'm thinking of the next guy. Apologies, but
no, he's 5'11". He's what he came in.
Okay,
just a fuzz over 5'11".
The next guy is also 5'11", I believe.
Yeah, so. 5'11", 190. He ran well, 4.41, 11-foot jump in a 38.5 vert, and I even think someone in our comments mentioned he doesn't turn 21 until draft weekend. So as far as athletic testing, as far as age, he fits the criteria for sure.
Yeah, and the Browns. I mean, with corner, I mean, Greedy Williams. We don't really kind of know.
Nobody knows.
Denzel Ward is elite, but when he's on the field, he's elite. That's always the big caveat there. So. Yeah, I think corner, and if you think he can play safety too, that's great. If you think a guy can play multiple roles, quite frankly, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, the 4th, 5th round, I gave him a 5th. That's where I would take Darren Hall, just because I think there's a little too many concerns in zone coverage where I'm just like, but if you're just running man, if you're a heavy man defense, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I think they want to get there eventually. They need the personnel, so that fits. Talk about our last guy here, another safety worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, Forrest is a really fun evaluation because he's a safety that's not afraid to come down and play the run. I always love those kind of safeties who aren't afraid to get in the mix. There's an offensive lineman pulling. I don't care. I'm going to come down the field and try and make the play. That's Forrest. I mean, I think he has over like 200 career tackles, super productive, rangy kind of guy. I think when you look at his ability, I think he could round out the Browns' safety room. That's why I put him in there as a safety 3, safety 4, elite special teamer, comes in, he plays split field looks. I think that's where you find Forrest. And if you can get him in the 5th round, I wouldn't mind a 4th rounder on him just because I'm really high on him. But, it kind of seems like the league is going to put him in the 5th round. I think he's a safer version of his teammate, James Wiggins. He doesn't have the amount of injuries Wiggins does. And when you look at the athleticism he plays with, the instincts, the toughness, the tackling ability. I think that's super critical in safeties, because we've seen so many safeties who have all this athleticism and can't tackle to save their lives. Demarius Randall.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So that, to me, I like his ability. If the Browns aren't super comfortable and they're like, hey, this guy can play a lot of hats for us in the back end, he's a guy that we can kind of ease in, delp it with. I think Forrest is the right guy.
Yeah, I mean, especially I have to check out his tape, but I mean, he had 106 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 6 passes defended, and 3 picks his junior year. I mean, that's phenomenal production, market share numbers, and a similar look. I mean, he's pretty much the same testing numbers as Darren Hall, which are phenomenal testing numbers: a 4.41, a 39 vert, an 11-foot jump, all of the numbers you want to see. But he's doing it 20 pounds heavier, essentially at 206, 5'11 and some change, 206. So again, production, market share numbers are there, and the athletic testing production's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are, again, and the age. He's just 21. He'll turn 22 in season. Those are the things that the Browns are looking for. So, that's I didn't even say this stuff to AJ, and I think he brought a really good mixture of those guys who fit what the Browns are looking to find, which are high-end athletes with projectable traits and guys that. And guys, listen, I know this isn't a secret. Most of the NFL is trending toward trying to do this. Everybody wants to draft young if they can, but the Browns' MO is literally, as we have talked about forever now, dating back to when Steven started on the OBR's draft mock stuff, is like they trend young and they train great athlete. That's just what they do. They want a lot of snaps, and those guys that we've talked about tonight fit that criteria, and especially fun getting some late-round guys that I have not heard some people talk about. So, AJ, man, I really, really, really appreciate you taking some time for us, man. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
You can find my work right now on the Pro Football Network. I'm getting ready to drop a full 7-round mock draft this weekend for Pro Football Network. Let me tell you, I spent the last 3 days working on this thing, and
those are harder than people think they are.
It's going to take some time. It probably will be ready about Thursday night. But maybe there's a few of these guys that I might have on there for the Browns. I might not. You never know. Just have to read it and find out.
Steven wanted me to tell you to ask what the Rams are doing with their first round.
Wow, buddy. Wow.
Shots fired, as usual.
I have a few buddies who have made a bet whether the Rams will make a first-round draft pick before I get married or not. And currently, there's no ring on this finger, and
they don't have any first-round picks. They're just renting houses and all that fun stuff. Hey, I do want to talk about too your Pro Football Network. I know we're talking about the OBR. We're doing a live show all first round Thursday night, and then we're going to do a couple hours on Friday. You guys have a show, obviously pre-draft shows that are coming up.
Yeah.
The Dog Pound Legends event that's on April 30th at 11:30 a.m. Tickets include little entrance, little lunch giveaways, and then QAs with Kevin Mack, Hanford Dixon, which all of our OBR followers are very familiar with. There's a link there to get tickets. If you are looking for this specific link, it is in the response to my preview tonight for AJ and I's get together. So go there, get that, check out the pre-draft show from Pro Football Network, and then jump on our show during the draft. Again, AJ, man, I appreciate you, dude. And I don't know if did you drop your @ for everybody to follow you?
Oh, it's at AJ Draft Scout. I kind of have it in my name, if they can see that on the. So it's spelled exactly like that. You'll find my mug. That's that's the profile picture right there. It's been that way since January of last year.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah, you come for the offensive line takes, because that's where I get the most feisty is.
Stop converting tackles, right?
Stop converting good tackles to guard. That's the
mantra. That's right. All right, we will check in with AJ again at some point down the line, maybe this summer when things get real boring out here. So
if you guys want to guest on the draft show, I mean,
we are going to have some time slots.
I'm not on the PFN one as far as I know. They've not told me I'm on it, so
we will be in conversation. We'll get you on.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, man. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for checking us out tonight. Make sure, again, you're subscribing to the OBR YouTube channel. Every time we go live, you get notified. And make sure you're subscribing through Spotify, Apple Pods, whatever. and checking out the audio form of these podcasts as well. We appreciate your time, and we'll be back tomorrow with another great guest. Until then, go Browns.